I had a fair few comments on my animated Sharda video last year commending me for suggesting the Macra Terror as a future missing episode animation project, and then lo and behold it gets released in 2019. But I don't think this was particularly prescient of me because it just makes sense whichever way you look at it. It's short and it features giant crabs, which are at least interesting to look at for the audience and the animators while they're working on it. A couple of the big lessons from the Power of the Daleks animation from a couple of years ago were that giving these people a strict deadline for 2.5 hours of animation to reconstruct something that is going to be missing forever was a stupid idea. Give these people all the time they need to work on this because forever is quite a long time. Another lesson was that the most visually interesting bit that got the most attention by the animators in the process were the Daleks. So doing a short missing episode with a visually interesting monster in it makes a lot of sense. Anyway, Macra Terror is an interesting story because it basically preceded this whole wave of taking the sci-fi dystopia concept and retooling it so that a young audience can get in on the ground floor. Because it's basically 1984 but with giant crabs. Episode 1's bloody marvellous because it just drops some young fish out of water characters into this strange colony where the inhabitants are doing some work because, reasons, while being overseen by this sinister Big Brother type figure on the screen. This type of idea always works well with young people because it feels relatable. You question why the world around you works the way it does, and the answer given is typically because I said so, that's why. Look, we just need this gas, alright? And revealing that adults are actually subject to mental conditioning and that people are being controlled by giant crabs to serve their purposes is a great creative answer. Okay, yes it is fucking stupid, but it's 60s Doctor Who, just go with it, alright? Yeah, like when you're watching any vintage TV, it is the 60s here, you do have to set it in context. None of this is to say that the Macra Terror was particularly ahead of its time, a progenitor for this wave of young adult dystopian narratives, or was massively influential on anything. Hell, it's been missing for over 40 years, it'd be pretty fucking stupid to say that. That and it fits within the climate of late 60s sci-fi perfectly, it's pretty incongruous. All I'm saying is that it's interesting to me that it displays some basic rudimentary features of a particular type of media that came to be a major force in pop culture decades later. And for the time, I think it does a pretty good job of presenting young people feeling out of place in an oppressive environment. One of my favourite scenes in all the classic Doctor Who is in episode 2 of Macra Terror, where Jamie, Ben and Polly are all trying to get some sleep, and Jamie hears this sinister voice whispering to him, programming him to obey. He tells Ben, but Ben knocks it back and the conditioning seems to have started working on him. It's a simple scene, but it's so unsettling.
In the morning, when you wake, you will obey.
The thing that most of you who haven't seen this yet are probably wondering and want me to talk about is the new animation better than the Power of the Daleks one? And the short answer is yes, but the long one is, like with the Power of the Daleks one, it is complicated. The Macra themselves look absolutely astonishing. They just glide so eerily across the dark and dingy environments and are so damn impressive that I feel really fucking horrible about what I have to say about them. The problem is that the animation looks too good. And this is literally the only circumstance in which that counts as a complaint. The Macra in the animation looks so much better than the actual models from the episode that we can see in these brief surviving clips. And the original audio, like with the Power of the Daleks one, doesn't really match up with what we're seeing. The animation team are almost too good at their jobs. It feels stupid saying this, but is there a way to make it look slightly shitter next time? Maybe you could hire some randomer who sucks at drawing like me to reconstruct Doctor Who.
There's another one!
The human characters are much better than the ones in the Power animation. The team behind it are extremely talented and have improved shed loads since then. The faces are much better and the movement of the characters is much more fluid, and it doesn't break your suspension of disbelief nearly as often, but there are still moments where the soundtrack's littered with noises of movement that the animation team, who are trying to reconstruct a 45-year-old TV episode that hasn't been seen by anyone since the 60s, would never be able to recreate in totality. display. Just like with the telesnap reconstructions that we lived with for years, it does still require a degree of audience participation to recreate the experience of the Macra terror, when the ambition and quality on display in this animation makes it feel like it should have been more than a recreation. I made a hysterically controversial suggestion in my review of the Shada animation last year that maybe it's the original audio that's the problem, that an animation project there to substitute missing footage rather than exist as its own entity will always come up short by comparison because it's trying too hard to be faithful to the original. The audio for an animated project kinda needs to be made for the specific purpose of that animation, or the disconnect between the two is going to be noticeable. The controversial bit being my suggestion that maybe we should just ditch the audio, recast and re-record it and remake it in full rather than half recreating it because, hell, we've got the audio half, right? Now, I'm not saying that a full recast remake is a good idea. I don't know if I would prefer that. I know that lots of people wouldn't, given how controversial that suggestion was when I first made it, but I can't help but return to it here because it's even more pertinent because of just how good this iteration of Macra Terror looks, and how out of place it sounds. This team are so talented, really ambitious, but they're almost too good for these projects that are reliant on sound recording of a cheap BBC show made in a hurry in the late 60s. And from the production notes, telesnaps and these surviving clips, the Macra Terror sounds like it was one of the shoddier looking 60s Doctor Who serials. The models were a bit naff and have been noted as being hard to act against. Polly's screaming was overdone on purpose to distract from how they looked, but the animation that they've replaced the visuals with is so good that there is a noticeable disconnect between the audio and the visuals. I know this is hard. I love the original audio soundtracks like you do, but I just think that in the future we need to decide what the purpose of these animated missing episode projects actually is. Is it to recreate a lost TV show, or is it to exist as an animated episode of Doctor Who? Because these are two different purposes, and as the projects currently stand, they're kind of a mix of both due to the ambition on display, and because of that they might end up a bit off-putting to some. As I said, the telesnap reconstructions also require similar levels of audience participation to recreate missing TV, and these animations blatantly want to go beyond that. I mean, yes, I'm a classic Doctor Who nerd, and I love the missing episode soundtracks, and I'm getting a lot out of these animation projects, and I'm salivating at the thought of which one they'll do next. But I'm just getting stuck at the question, is this really as far as the animation team want to go? Because I'm getting the impression of higher ambitions than that. And yes, I know it does feel sacrilegious to suggest that the audio is the problem and might need ditching altogether, but I just get stuck at that suggestion because I just think that the team behind these animations deserve to be given some projects that can stand on their own someday. Because they are doing much more than just setting telesnaps to a soundtrack, and that might be part of why watching them feels a bit weird at the moment, because it's not totally like watching 60s Doctor Who done as a cartoon, and not totally like a telesnap reconstruction. It kinda sits in the uncanny valley. Don't get me wrong with anything I've said here, I love Macra Terror, and I thought this DVD was bloody good fun, and I highly recommend it. And if they keep up this level of improvement with each release, then I'm happy to wait until my late 40s for Fury from the Deep. Just give them all the time they need to work on that one. Maybe do some of the shitter ones like the Space Pirates for practice in the meantime.